Our minds are swathed in imagery of shadows and brilliance. The vivid duality of wickedness and righteousness pervades our thoughts and alters our perceptions. Whether this is an environmental input of religion and modern morality, or hardwired into the brain is above my judgment. The real inquiry lies in the definitions of the two contrasting principles, and the natures thereof. What is evil, and can evil exist without goodness? Is everything basked in goodness? As Pseudo-Dionysius claims, does there exist a moral law in the universe, on which one side is good and the other is evil? Or is nothing inherently good nor evil, only our perceptions paint them in this light? The very nature of this undertaking demands the defining of duality. Duality is an extraordinarily broad topic, and merits thousands of papers on its logical underpinnings, but is very simple to observe. In order to understand something, or even to identify it, it must have opposition. A commonly used example of this is that of light and darkness, and that without any light in the universe everything would be dark. However, it would not be thought of as darkness, because there would be no light to compare it to. It is simply is as everything is, and does not need to be mentioned. Similarly, if the entire universe was perfectly and wholly lit from corner to corner, everything would be covered in light, but it would not be perceived as light, nor would it even be perceived. In the endeavor to unveil this mystery, religion and philosophy can become muddled together and interfere with the investigation. It will be important to identify the origins of ideas and what the significance of these sources are. Religion explains the purpose and origination of both humans and the universe, and if believed to be true, is generally indisputable. Religions explain how the cosmos is. It has true nature, and contains the moral philosophies held to be true. Whereas philosophy is generally a subjective opinion or theory, one pondering how one's own personal world functions. Non-religious philosophies are usually self-aware of their own possible inaccuracies, and do not claim to be the undeniable truth of existence. Pseudo-Dionysius suggests that good has very similar attributes to light, especially in the format of metaphor. He aligns the sun, the source of light on earth, with God, the source of all good, in an allegory to illustrate his philosophy. He further matches good with light, saying that evil does not exist, but is merely the absence of good, much like darkness is non-existent, only the lack of perceivable light waves in that area. Important to Pseudo-Dionysius' theory is the idea of a vanishing mediator, which is a concept that exists to mediate between two opposing ideas, as a transition occurs between them but is ironically imperceptible in that relationship. To present this abstraction with a familiar notion, we will use the example of light once more. In visual perception there are two participants, the seer and the seen. But these two cannot interact because the seer's eyes cannot function. They have no stimulus or input until light is introduced into the equation. And even when they can see the object of their desires, they never saw the actual waves of light. If a seer attempts to gaze into a perfect source of light, they can see nothing and will blind themselves. Likewise, the good is purposed to be a vanishing mediator between thinkers and thoughts. This is a complicated and difficult proposal to conceive, if not impossible, because, if this holds true, just as one cannot stare into the sun, we cannot directly think of God. In religious and philosophical context, Pseudo-Dionysius' idea is a complicated interrelation. It is a sub-philosophy of the Catholic religion, which has its own dogma and practices. It could be seen as blasphemous, because it asserts there is no source of evil and may imply there is no Satan or hell. It challenges the Judeo-Christian ideals of good against evil, and paints God as a powerful benevolent object, as opposed to an omnipotent sentience. However, Pseudo-Dionysius presents this philosophy as just that, and not a literal interpretation or challenge to his religion. Most religions will assert laws or commandments from an omnipotent and omniscient being, of which are open to very little interpretation. If you believe a powerful deity truly exists, its word is not up for debate nor vote. Are these laws subject to the God's opinions on what he feels to be moral, or because he is all-knowing? Has he come to understand the perfect and true philosophy, the unchangeable law of the universe by which he must to abide? It is a difficult paradox, in which he is either weak or cruel, In the first, God is subject to the whims of morality itself, and loses his freedom and power. In the latter, God is knowingly disowning and damning his loved children for his own opinions on morality. God figuratively draws a line, or in the case in which he is weak, finds a line, and declares everything on one side of it evil and the other side good. Because of the modern view of an all-knowing, all-powerful and benevolent deity, I cannot accept either the cruel nor weak God as God, because he does not fit his own definition. A cruel God could not be benevolent and a weak God could not be omnipotent, and thus they have debunked themselves. The exception of this would be a God which is not omniscient, or even conscious, as Pseudo-Dionysius seems to imply, but as source of goodness and peace. This God could not be knowingly persecuting his own offspring, because it cannot know. The third possibility of the reality of good and evil is the reductionist view, in which there is an objectivity to everything. Kitten murder, charity, a leaf falling and a moon orbiting a planet are all inherently equal in morality. Humans apply judgment to their environment, and decide what seems correct and what seems evil. This would explain why every individual human has a slightly different view of morality, as there is not one philosophy that is correct, and can only be judged in terms of opinion and popularity in society. The main contrast between the reductionist perception and the ideas of Pseudo-Dionysius is the existence of good and evil. In one, the world is all one moral state, with no duality, and has become objective. Reductionists believe that humans label neutral ideas based on personal opinion. In the other, according to PD, there is a duality of good and evil, and good exists without humans to perceive it, just as light exists in the far corners of the universe, away from human eyes. Both of these philosophies seem feasible and logically plausible, although one seems more optimistic than the harsh and almost nihilistic reductionist view. It seems that Pseudo-Dionysius' view contradicts duality, and seems to be the exact opposite. Mankind would indeed be unable to define evil without the good, but it would still exist as an objective existence. Likewise, if there was infinite light and no darkness, we could not define it, but it would still be there. Just as if the universe was lit infinitely, there would be measurable and feasible light waves in all locations. Similarly enough, the opposing philosophy of reductionism contains no duality either, only measurable atoms and molecules. If all of the molecules were identical, there would be no duality in the molecules, but they could still be quantified. In both of these views, duality is a human fallacy and inability of the mind to perceive the universe accurately. Until the end of human existence, there will always be a fascination with a battle between benevolence and malevolence, and an infinitum of possible philosophies and improbable religions will spring forward. Although reductionists strive for it, an objective and accurate perception of the universe will likely never be found, and may not even exist, let alone the idea of an absolute morality. Mankind can attempt to learn and understand the world around them, and even though it will be riddled with inaccuracy and misconceptions and impossibilities and paradoxes, we should always be pushing upwards and ascending in thought, whether it be towards